All right, we left you off yesterday talking about volumetric efficiency is correct. Thank you. And we're going to talk about how to increase volumetric efficiency. Other than what we already talked about, which would be the opposite of what is bad. Let's see. Wide open throttle means higher volumetric, so just fly around at wide open throttle. Don't go at idle, but you don't really care. Sharp bends, so we straighten out our intake system, make sure that it's running, take out the sharp bends, put the carburetor, fuel injection, or the air closer, cool the air coming in. Don't use hot air, that would help. So, all right, let's talk about, to increase volumetric, we're going to talk about something else. Oh, that's good. Thank you for choosing to be that color. To increase volumetric efficiency and lower cylinder operating temps. What is the cylinder operating temperature also called?
CHT.
CHT, cylinder head temperature. CHT. So now I can just put CHT. Save time. Valves may open and close at times other than bottom dead center or top dead center. Right? So in our simplified version of the little engine in our write-up, the valves always either opened or closed at top dead center or bottom dead center. Right? There was no real variation. But there actually is variation in engines. So let's see. Let's talk about a couple things. So we could have something called valve lag. Well, I don't like that. I'll go with it. Valve lag. It's just late. It would be another way of putting it, but I said opening or closing. Opening or closing after TDC or BDC. Then we'd have valve lead. Not lead, valve lead. Opening or closing before. TDC or BDC. You know, honestly, those two terms, I don't use them. I don't really know where they come up much. So I wouldn't worry about those. But we do use duration. Duration's one. I think it's even some test questions in there about duration. You have to know what that is. And that is time. Valve is off its seat or open, right? If it's off the seat, valve closes against the seat. If it's off the seat, then it is open. And then we're going to have a thing called valve overlap. And that is the number of degrees of crankshaft travel that both valves are open at the same time. Number of degrees of crank rotation both valves are off the seat. Both valves are open at the same time. So in other words, intake and exhaust are happening simultaneously, if you will. And since I wrote it in my notes, I'll write it here, but I'll explain it more later. I know that. Why would they both be open at the same time? Because it promotes better scavenging. And I'll explain that in a little bit. And cooling. I think it increases volumetric efficiency. I'll put that. And volumetric efficiency.
scavenging that helps cool the hell into the heads, or is it just in addition to?
You know, I'm going to say in addition to.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see. All right. How come I didn't talk about this? Oh. I did talk about that. I just didn't use a picture to describe it. Thermal efficiency of engines. This is in your book. You would know that if you read it. Everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, we read that.
What's the book?
I read that. Have you seen this before?
Yeah, in the book.
There you go. That to me makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it hurts my brain.
It's a little rough.
And this is valve overlap right there. 75 degrees, both valves open between here and here because that's doing something, that's doing something. So I thought to myself, because that's what I call myself in my head, there's got to be a better way to do that. And this is the way I came up with. Let me see. Valve timing from the FAA books. We'll just do that. Valve timing from FAA textbook. In case you want to know what I'm looking at. Let me see. When discussing degrees of rotation, the rotation is in reference to the crankshaft rotation measured with a timing disc. Oh, I remember why I wrote that because I think that's a Q&A question. When discussing degrees of rotation, the rotation is referenced, referencing the crankshaft rotation. I'm just going to put crank rotation measured with a timing disc, because that's a Q&A thing. Measured with a timing disc. What's a timing disc? A timing disc is a disc, you're going to hate them, sometimes called a flower pot. I don't think I have a picture of them. Let me see. Maybe I do. No timing disc picture. Anyway, it's a disc that it goes on the front of the crankshaft, and it has 360 degrees on a little pendulum that just points to the number of degrees of rotation. When you rotate the crankshaft around, the disc moves. The little pointer, because it's weighted, stays pointing up and points the number of degrees of rotation. You will see one eventually, I promise. Okay, so what we have for this here, let's take a look at how they draw it out. So let me see. We have the intake valve. So this FAA example I just showed you, let's talk about the intake valve. The intake valve opens 50 degrees before top dead center. They're going to tell you that. And closes, they say about, we're just going to go with it, and closes (30 degrees after bottom dead center. Exhaust valve. The exhaust valve opens at 30 degrees before bottom dead center and closes
50 degrees.
25 degrees after top dead center. All right, so let's just take a look at this here. You write that out so you can have the same numbers I'm working with.
Could you scroll up a little bit?
Oh wow, he's really going to hold us up here. Going to talk at the same time? I mean, when you're ready. I was thinking the same thing.
Let's go.
Okay, So let's draw a little chart. Instead of that circle, let's draw it out linear. So let's think. We have, what are the 4 strokes now? Intake. Intake. Compression. Power. Exhaust. All right, what comes after exhaust? Intake. What comes before intake? Exhaust. All right, so now we have a full picture here, right? And so let's kind of divide this up into a grid. And we'll use this color here. And what is the piston doing on the exhaust stroke? Is it going up or down? Up. So let's do this. We'll kind of make this go like that. So this will be like top dead center, if you will, and this can be bottom dead center down here. So that is the piston going from bottom dead center to top dead center. So on the intake stroke, it's going to go down. This is just to remind us, and it's going to go back up, then down, and up, then down, just so we have a visual kind of picture of what's happening in each thing, right? And because this whole grid right here, that's the intake, this is the compression, this is power, exhaust, back to intake, start off with exhaust. All right, so if we look at the notes that I had, we'll do blue can be my my valves here. We'll make it a little bit wider right there. So the valve, when did the valve open? Let me back up just a little bit. How many degrees does each one of these grids count for? How many degrees of crankshaft rotation to go from bottom dead center to top dead center? 180 degrees. So each one of these is 180 degrees. 180 there, 180 there, 180 there, 180 there, and 180 there. Yeah? Okay. So if each one of those is 180, that's going to help us. Now, when did I say the intake valve opens? Okay, where should the intake valve be open? Where do we know it to be open? Always. What's that?
50 degrees.
No. In our simplified version, let's go.
Top dead center.
Which stroke is it open? Intake stroke. So this is going to be the valve is open right there on the intake stroke, and the valve's going to be open here, right? Okay. Now, what did it say? It was, we can do this. Exhaust is open when? That was too much. When is the exhaust valves open? All right, so it's open there, and it's open here for sure, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that color is much better to deal with. 1, 2, 3. All right. So according to this diagram, the intake valve opens when? 50 degrees before top dead center. So that is, we'll say, about right there, right? 50 degrees. And it closes when?
30 degrees after the bottom.
All right, so it's going to be 30 degrees right there. So it's open from 50 to 30 right there. Well, we got to remember this over here. So this is over here at also at 50. Okay, what about that exhaust valve? What did it do?
It opens at 30 degrees before bottom dead center and closes 25 degrees after top dead center.
So opens at 30 and closes 25. All right, so then what we have, and it closes 25. I got to do that over here, 25. All right, so then what we're looking at is this right here to this right here. You can see it here in its entirety, and we can see it right here and right here. How much valve overlap do we have?
75 degrees.
All right, so that right there is 75 degrees. Both of them are off their seat or open for 75 degrees. Everybody see where I get 75? It's 50 to the left and 25 to the right. So that's 75 degrees. All right, so why does it do that? And you'll have to write this in because I guess I'm not. Well, let me see. I can write this in. Oh, yeah. I just want this. Let's see. So, intake valve. Intake valve. Let me see. Opens early. I don't know if I can do each one. All right. Let me just go through this and I'll figure out how to write it. So what we have in the cylinder, if we think about what's happening here, is that, let's start here on compression. So the piston is now, it's coming up and it's compressing, and both valves are closed in this area. And it's going to compress that fuel-air mixture, and then the ignition is going to go off right about here, right? About 25 degrees before. So about 25 degrees before, roughly, depends on the engine. And then you're going to have this power stroke, right? The fuel-air mixture lights off, it expands, it's pushing down the piston. And we talked yesterday about most of this energy is, well, not the energy, but it's done expanding at about 14 degrees, right? Or it's done burning by 14 degrees, and it's pushing the piston. Now, as the piston reaches the bottom of this stroke right here, bottom of the stroke, about 30 degrees before, a little bit before that, really the burning gases have expended all of their energy on the piston. They're no longer pushing on the piston. So what are they doing? Well, they're just hanging around inside the cylinder at close to 2,000 degrees, and we've locked it in the cylinder. What good is that doing us? Well, what it's doing is it's heating up the cylinder. So now we're no longer using the heat energy to push the piston. We're transferring that heat energy into heating up the cylinder. We don't want that. We want the cylinder head temperatures to be, well, I like them to be 400 degrees or less, but you're allowed to go higher than that. Not by much, 425, 475. But anyway, so it's just, all it's doing is heating up the cylinder. So why not open the exhaust valve up early and get it the heck out of here, which is exactly why it opens early. Get the exhaust gas out. It's not doing any work for us. It's just overheating the piston and the cylinder. So open the door, let it out. That's why you open that early. All right, so open it up early. Now the piston finishes going down. The valve's already open. This expanding gas starts leaving the exhaust valve. Piston turns around and starts coming up, and it's just going to push it out, right? So it's pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out. But about 50 degrees, according to this example, before it gets to the top, the exhaust valve is open. Now the intake valve is going to be open. So they're both opening. Why? Well, as you're pushing out this exhaust and it's leaving, it starts to create a low pressure area nearby that intake valve. So you open the intake valve, take advantage of the low pressure, even though the piston is coming up, and the flow of gases tends to start to bring in the fuel air charge into the cylinder. So we'll come to this side now over here. And so that's what's happening. Well, so the piston comes up and starts to come down, but it's still got the flow of that exhaust valve being open is helping the intake come in. So now we're going to shut down the exhaust valve because at some point it's not doing any good. And if we left it open any longer, what happens is the exhaust starts to go the other way and it lights off the intake. So you can't let the exhaust valve stay open too long or the fuel air mixture gets lit off because it's very hot. 1,500, 2,000 degrees. All right, so we shut down the exhaust valve because it's done all of its work. And the piston draws down this fuel air mixture. Well, it's running in, and we get to the bottom dead center of the intake stroke when you should close the intake valve. But guess what? The pressure in the cylinder is still so low that the fuel air mixture wants to keep coming in. It just has enough time to do it. Was it Jack? Were you the one that had the great example? The
water, yeah.
Yeah, my kids have those. The big, they're about this long, the squirt guns, and you put them in the pool, pull back like that. You got to wait for a minute. You pull it, you have all the suction, and it slowly fills up the gun. Then you pull it out, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing. Okay, so the piston starts to travel upward, but it's still, the pressure is still so low. Some engineer figured out, look, it's not going to really be completely full until the piston gets here about 30 degrees after top dead center. At about that point, the piston has started coming up. It's all the fuel air we're going to get into it. Just might as well shut the valve. Otherwise, we're going to start pushing it out the wrong way. So that's why that valve is closed at that point. So I guess I can't write all that down, but because that was a lot of wording. So then we go back into the compression and power stroke. So let's see, what did I cover?
So it's basically like it's still intaking while it's compressing.
Yep.
Right at the beginning.
Well, the piston's coming up, but it's not really compressing yet.
Okay.
It's just because of volumetric efficiency, how long it takes for the fuel to get in. That you might as well just leave the valve open a little bit longer.
well then also the movement of the piston isn't exactly a linear movement, it's a curve to it too.
The speed is.
Yeah.
Definitely. So he's talking about the speed of the piston is not linear, which is a point we'll talk about at some point. I'll talk about it now. So the piston moves very fast through its middle, and it moves very slow at the extremes. Because if you think about, where is that? There we go. If you think about what's happening, it's because the crankshaft right here, as it goes up and down, when it's going this way, it's pulling that piston pretty fast. But when it gets to the upper or the lower, most of its travel is sideways, which really doesn't affect the piston a whole lot. It's how when it gets here that it really starts to go. So it moves very fast through the middle. It's got to slow down, come to a complete stop, and reverse direction on the top and the bottom. So, all right. So intake valve opens early. Let me see. Yeah, I don't want to write everything I just wrote because it would take me a while. It takes like 2 pages to write all that. You guys good with that? Kind of understand that? Yeah. Let me see if I can condense it. Opens early. Let's see. Allows use of low pressure created by escaping exhaust gases to pull in. Okay, get used to this. F/A. That stands for fuel air mixture. All right, so if the valve opened too early, if you open up the valve this intake valve too early, then the gases that are being pushed out the exhaust would then want to go out the intake. And what happens to the fuel air mixture? You're going to have what's called a backfire. A backfire is synonymous to a burp. It goes the wrong way. An afterfire is synonymous to, I don't know, fart, man. Nobody it goes out the tailpipe. When you hear a loud explosion out the tailpipe, that's not a backfire. That's an afterfire. Backfire goes through the carburetor and air cleaner. Afterfire goes out the tailpipe. So if it opened up too early, we would light off the incoming fuel air mixture, which would be a
Backfire.
okay. No. Yes. Too early would equal a backfire. A boip. And let me see. Closes late. I'll put intake. Intake closes late. And that allows inertia of incoming fuel air to fill the cylinder. More. The exhaust valve, we see, opens early. To allow burnt gases. We should say hot. So we'll put hot air. Hot air to escape. It's no longer doing any work. So we just want to get it out of there. Otherwise, you're going to overheat your cylinder. And closes late. Closes late. All right, so let's see. Most of the energy, the fuel air is expanded about 18 to 120 degrees after top dead center of the power stroke. There's my. So allowing the heat to escape early does what for the cylinder? Keeps it cool. Closes late to use. Let's see. To allow inertia to. I'll put to allow inertia inertia to scavenge, remaining exhaust, and help bring in fuel air mixture. All right, let's do, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Basically, this is what I just drew. Exhaust, intake, compression, power. Exhaust, intake, compression, power. Each stroke is how many degrees? 180.
It's almost like you did this last.
It's like I spent a lot of time doing this. I forgot I did it. I just wrote it out. All right, so each that's. All right, so intake is open. 50 before, 30 after. 50 before, 30 after. So what is my duration?
260.
Because this is going to be a test question, I'm telling you right now. So I know it's on the Q&As. I know I wrote it. What is the duration? What does duration mean?
How long it's open.
How long it's off the seat. How long it is open. What is the duration of the intake valve?
260 degrees.
How do we know what the duration is?
180 degrees plus 50 plus 30. Plus the before and after.
Okay, it's simple math, but you just got to think about what are they asking? How long is the valve open? We know that it's open for 180 degrees, and it's open another
50 degrees and 30 degrees.
So we do some difficult math. The formula is 50 plus 180 plus 30. So it's open 50 before, plus the 180, plus the 30 equals 260 is the duration. Everybody got that? On the test. All right, exhaust valve. We know that it's open 180 degrees plus 30 before and 25 after. So what is the duration of that valve? 180 plus
30
plus 25. So 235 duration. What is the valve overlap?
75 degrees.
Valve overlap is the time when they're both open. When are they both open? Right here and right there, which is 50 before and 25 after for 75 degrees overlap. Everybody got that?
Yes, sir.
All right. One more time. Let's see. This is actually a Continental E185. An E185 is an older version of Continentals. The old Continentals had A, C, and E versions. There was the A65, A75, the C85, and the number is the horsepower. So this would have been an E model engine with 185 horsepower, 470 cubic inch. It became the 0470 of today, but they're a little different. So anyway, we have, if I wrote it out like this, 15 degrees before top dead center. Hopefully those initials are correct. All right, so drawing out the little grid, we can do exhaust, intake, compression, power, exhaust, intake. And we know that the intake had better be open through the intake, right? And the exhaust is going to be open through the exhaust stroke, because we just know that. And now we can look at this. The IO, which stands for?
Intake opens.
Intake opens 15 degrees. What the hell is that? Whoa.
shape.
I know. It won't go away either. All right, whatever. 15 degrees, and the intake closes at 60 after. And the exhaust, oops, over here, 15. And exhaust opens 55 early. What did I do? There we go. 55. Exhaust opens 55. And exhaust closes 15 after. What is the duration of the exhaust?
It's 250.
It is 180 plus
55 plus 15.
plus how much?
55.
55 right there. Everybody follow? Plus 15. Is there anybody who does not know where I got those numbers from? And it's okay. Everybody's got it? Okay. So duration is 180 plus 55 plus 15. How much? 250 degrees. All right. And so we'll look at the intake duration, which we know is 180 from right there, plus
60.
Okay, plus 60 plus
15.
15. So the duration is
55.
255. What is the overlap?
30 degrees.
15 plus 15.
15 plus 15 equals 30. All right. Yes.
I was curious about something in regards to the cubic inch size of an engine. Is it?
Can we talk about that a little bit later, maybe?
Sure. We can
Okay.
talk about it later.
All right, go ahead. You got my curiosity.
Is it talking about the volume within the cylinders itself, or talking about the overall volume of the engine?
Definitely we are going to talk about this later, but cubic inch displacement is literally how much it displaces. So if you took, say, the engine you're working on, and you didn't have it setting like this, but had it setting normal, and put the bottom spark plugs in, and pulled one piston all the way to bottom dead center, and filled the whole thing up with water or oil, and then filled it up till it was started to come out of the spark plug. Then you brought it all the way up on the compression stroke and measured how much it pumped out. That is a displacement.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. How many degrees are both valves closed? How many degrees are both valves closed? Now, how would I figure that out?
You do 180 minus 55 and 180 minus 60, and both of those answers
Okay.
added together.
So let's think about it. It's only 4 strokes, right? So we got to cut it off here. So we'll go 4 strokes. There's 1. Wow, that just was weird. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So there's my 4 strokes between here and here. I'm saying how many degrees are both valves closed? How many degrees are both valves closed in the intake? 0. How many degrees are both valves closed here?
120.
Okay, it's 180 minus 60 for 120. How about here?
125.
Oops, 180 minus 55 is,
125.
how much is that?
125.
125. And then how many? 0. So both valves are closed
Or 245.
245 degrees. Everybody should be able to do this. And I think if you draw a little grid like this, there's no reason why you can't just simple. Everybody understand this so far? They're just simple little questions asking if you can understand what's happening inside of the engine. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now, which is interesting. And as somebody, I mean, you can be the greatest engine builder of all time. And if you walk up that person and go, so what is the valve duration of that engine? Most of the time they're going to go, I don't freaking know. It's all part of the camshaft. I don't get to make the camshaft. I just build it exactly per the book. Because you can read your Lycoming manual forward and back, and I think every service bulletin, I've never once seen anywhere where it talks about valve duration, where to find. I think I measured this actually. I had somebody go out and measure this, or I found it was an obscure manual. But Lycoming has a funny little thing about it. Now, I'm going to tell you, so building engines, if an engine doesn't start immediately, everybody's going to say the same thing. Oh, see if you can guess it. What did you do? You're the engine builder. It didn't start instantly. What did you do wrong?
I did the time
What timing?
cam to crank.
Every single time. If it doesn't start like that, every single time they say, you didn't time the cam to crank timing right. All right. So for that reason, when I built an engine, I always used a little bit of red fingernail polish, and I dotted there's a little etched O on Lycoming on their gear, and then there's two etched on the idler gear, one on a tooth, one in between a tooth, and then the cam has an etching on it. And I would dot all of those. I would line them all up for final assembly. I would have somebody come in the shop, and it was a checklist I made out. I would say, I need you to go check this. And let me tell you the greatest thing about checklists and having somebody else do it. I could ask one of you guys, I need you to check this. And you'd say, I've never built an engine in my life. Why are you asking me? The point is, I have, and I'm showing you what I did. So guess who's really doing the double checking? That's me. If I really care, I know a lot of Q&A isn't set up that way. It's supposed to be removed. It's like, you have to check my work. But in a lot of situations, even if it's somebody junior who doesn't know what you're doing, just the fact that you went and got them, and if I had to explain to you, see how I did this and this and that and this and that, and then you sign my paper, that night when I'm sleeping, guess what? I know full well it was done because I had to explain myself to get somebody to do it. So anyway, guess how often the cam and crank is really mistimed? I've never seen it in my life. But Lycoming has a very neat little thing that I read to tell you how to determine if you have the crank and cam timing off. Now everybody understands the crankshaft is the muscle of the operation, but the camshaft is the brains of the operation. You have to have this orange gear timed to this green gear so that when this comes around to the right spot, this little lobe right here tells the rocker arm when to open the valve, right? So if I'm off a tooth here, then it's going to tell the valve to open either early or late, depending on which way I'm off on the tooth. Everybody follow that? That's why it's critical that these teeth line up exactly. Okay, what Lycoming says is if you aren't sure if it is timed correctly, put the engine on, where are we at here? Intake. Oh, top dead center, TDC of the intake stroke. That's where I have it right there. Top dead center intake. See if I go just a little bit more, what's going to happen? Intake. Got it? And Lycoming says top dead center of intake stroke. Rotate the prop slightly in the direction of rotation. Do this on the number one cylinder. Top dead center of intake stroke. Remove the valve cover and watch. As you move the crankshaft even the slightest bit in the direction of rotation, you will notice that the intake valve will open. And go back to top dead center and rotate it just a little tiny bit backwards, and you will notice that the exhaust valve opens. Go back to top dead center and both valves will be closed. What does that tell you about Lycoming's valve overlap?
Very little.
There is none.
There's none.
If what I just said is true, then there is no valve overlap. And what I told you is true. So Lycoming has no valve overlap. So let's see if let's put this to the test. When you build your engines back up and you're going to be setting the timing, tell me if there's any valve overlap. fact, for extra credit, if anybody wants to, and I think somebody's already done this and I lost it, give me the, oh, didn't lose it. Let me see.
Just under a couple papers.
Oh, that's O200. Sorry, this is for an O200. Yeah, give me the, give me this for your 290. I would like to see that. What is the valve duration on that one? Won't be hard, I don't think. Okay. Where are we here? We got that down. It's so much more to go. Okay, fine. And last but not least, I've said it, but I'll write it. How else can we increase volumetric efficiency other than making sure the pipes are straight, making sure our air is cold, making the right right valve duration, not necessarily overlap, because Lycoming doesn't believe in that. What other things can we do to increase volumetric efficiency in any way, shape, or form?
Superchargers.
All right, so volumetric efficiency can be increased with the use of forced injection, which would be a turbocharger, a supercharger, or ram air. All right, so when we talk about turbo supercharging, it can get really confusing because of the way manufacturers use these terms. They'll call it a turbo supercharger. Well, does that mean it's both? No. So to keep things simple, whenever I say a turbocharger, that is a device that is run off of exhaust gases, which we talk about in the next series of classes. A device run off, it's a compressor that is run off exhaust gases that turns a compressor that draws in air on the compressor side and compresses air and pushes it into the engine. There's a hot side and a cold side. A supercharger, per my definition, so we can all be on the same page, is a belt or gear-driven device that runs a compressor, either like a roots, well, you would know that, but a blower. Some people call it a blower. It could be a turbocharger-looking thing. You'll learn about, centrifugal or not. You'll learn about those with Phil as applied to turbo engines. When a manufacturer of an aircraft says turbo supercharging, it's a type of turbo. Or I shouldn't say type of turbo. I don't want to get into this now, but so there's different ways you turbocharge an engine. There's what we call turbo normalizing, which the turbo just tells the engine it's at sea level until it gets to its critical altitude, which is an altitude where it stops doing that. So you're in sea level, the turbocharger does very little. You go up 1,000 feet, turbocharger works a little bit more and tells the engine, now you're still at sea level, don't worry about it. Goes up to 10,000 feet. It works just hard enough so the engine goes, hey, I guess we're still at sea level. Right? That's turbo normalizing, just keeps it at sea level. Then there's turbo supercharging, where you actually boost it above sea level. When you're at sea level, it goes, whoa, are we in Death Valley here? You know, we're way over 30 inches. And then, so that's supercharging. And then ram air is just forcing air into the induction system via forward moon of the aircraft.
Go faster.
Yes. Yeah.
Some warbirds were turbocharged and supercharged, but wireless.
Yes, but I don't want to confuse old-timey stuff with the vernacular that is current to say the engine is turbo supercharged. And you go, oh, it has both? No, it doesn't. So, all right. Okay. So here, ignition timing. Ignition timing, the same way the valves open early and close late, the spark is early. So, in the same way, valves open and close early or late. The ignition does not happen at top dead center. It happens early happens early. So timing, ignition timing. Is typically 20 to 25 degrees before top dead center on compression. Not at top dead center. There's only one time that the engine, or only one event, not one time. There's only one event where the spark happens at top dead center. What is that event?
Starting.
Very good. Starting. What happens if we didn't retard the spark?
It would kick back.
It would kick back. Mhm. And break the starter and the starter ring gear. So, all right, break time.
No replacement for